Namaste, everybody. Welcome to the fourth session on basic principles of Ayurveda in the most applied form, which is understandable and readily applicable in day-to-day life. So today we are having two dear guests with us, who are two of our students, Dr. Anju Prem from California and Miss Denise Campbell from Amsterdam. Namaste both.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste. So Doctor, I proudly quickly introduce both of them. Dr. Anju Prem, she has completed BAMS, the Bachelor of Ayurveda Medicine and Surgery from India. And she has been practicing Ayurveda since 10 years, both in India and in the US. And currently, she is working as a neuromuscular therapist and health educator in a chiropractic hospital, Petaluma in California. And she has also completed another course in clinical and administrative medical assistance in 2021. And her goal is to use the wisdom of Ayurveda for those seeking relief from lifestyle diseases. Welcome, Anju, again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Anju. And next is our Denise. Denise, she's already working as a massage therapist in The Hague, in Netherlands, currently. And she's also a second-year student of our 4-year bachelor's course as Ayurveda practitioner training in the Amsterdam Ayurveda Academy, where I'm also a medical director. That's how we know each other. And she's also keen in learning Sanskrit in depth. And so she's also taking private lessons for learning Sanskrit so that she will be able to understand the ancient scriptures on Ayurveda thoroughly. And parallelly, she also studies a certificate course in Western medicine, medical fundamentals like physiology, biochemistry, etc., which they need to be qualified as a practitioner, a health practitioner in the West. So she's really an aspiring Ayurveda student who does everything possible to become a good Ayurveda practitioner, and proudly introduce and welcome Denise to this discussion as a panelist.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vijay. Nice to be here.
Okay. So it's a bit of a continuation of our last session, how to handle the fire in you, where I was trying to introduce the concept of fire, the digestive fire and other 12 fires, totally 13 fires in the body, which is compared to the ATP and NADH like energy releasing molecules which are stored by body in the process of metabolism, and also various kinds of pittas, which is a kind of expression of the fire itself, but in the liquid form, where the water element joins the fire and produces pitta. And we have also compared it to various enzymes and also endocrines, hormones, and also some of them to various pigments like rods and corns and melanin, some pigmentations in different parts of the body, which is responsible for various functions. And we have also seen that even though Pitta is classified into 5, there are more than 5 Pittas explained in Ayurvedic literature, especially when they deal with different pathologies. They speak about various other forms of Pitta as well. So today, the session is named as an alarm. You are inflammable. So this is an alarm we've set in the very second session, because we know the very word dosha stands for an imbalancing cause. And this nomenclature of dosha, which is something imbalancing, is kept purposefully by the ancient seers to remind you that the very functioning units or components or forces of human body have the tendency to react to both internal and external environments as a part of defense, and they can produce a lot of imbalances. So we have to handle our lifestyle, diet, mind, emotions, etc. carefully so that they don't really end up producing a lot of trouble and a lot of noise in us. So this was already a reminder. And when we compare the fire element and the pitta, we know we always handle fire with a lot of care, even externally. And there's a saying among the treatises that we should treat pitta like a king. This is how the approach towards fire and pitta should be, because it is highly inflammable. Pitta is as like a king. He can bless you like anything and protect you like anything, but at the same time, when he's angry, it can produce a lot of trouble for you also. So this is what we are going to look at: what is the inflammability, what is the damage that pitta can cause, and what is the cause. And we will start this session by inviting Denise to explain how and where we can kind of feel the pitta, which are the organs that we can experience pitta in our body.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to touch on how you introduced Pitta there, I want to remind everybody that Pitta, just the word Pitta, comes from the Sanskrit word tapas or tapa. And what tapa means is actually to heat or to become hot. So Pitta being among the three doshas that is made from, it's the only dosha that contains the element fire. It has inherent heat in it. So if we look at the body, places where there is heat, we should actually be able to see Pitta or find Pitta, which we will explore, of course. And where exactly in the body, of course? In the ancient scriptures, so specifically in Ashtanga Hridayam, in the first chapter, it is already explained that Pitta, if we divide the body into three sections, we have the section above the heart, and then we have the section between the heart and between the navel, and then the section below the navel. So really that section between the heart and between the navel, so the center of the body or the middle part of that, those three sections, this is where Pitta is located. So if we think about the organs in this middle section, then we can think about the stomach, the small intestine, but also the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas and the spleen. So all of these organs, and if we think about heat as well, this is where we should be able to find Pitta according to the ancient scriptures. So we'll talk a little bit about some specific organs as well. And as they are mentioned in the Ashtanga Hridayam, one of the three main ancient texts, as being the seat of Pitta dosha. So first it is explained as a seat of Pitta is the nabhi. So nabhi can be translated directly as navel. But when we think about the navel, we need to think a little bit further. It's not just the navel or just the umbilicus or just the observable belly button, but it is really on that level of the small intestine, which in Sanskrit is also called the grani. So we have to think a little bit about the small intestine from the duodenum to the ileum, that being a seat of Pitta dosha. And specifically, as Dr. Vijay had mentioned, Pitta also has subdoshas. So the small intestine is specifically the seat of a subdosha of Pitta called Pachaka Pitta. And Pachaka, to bring Sanskrit into this a little bit as well, it comes from the word paka, and paka means to cook, or actually to digest, to absorb, to assimilate. And if we draw that parallel with Western anatomy and physiology, we see it is in the small intestine that there is a lot of enzymes active for example, bile and also pancreatic juices that aid in that digestive and absorption process. And it is in the small intestine that the main part of chemical digestion and absorption happen. So naturally here we can see it being a seat of Pitta dosha. And it is not just the small intestine, but if we look a little bit higher, it's also the stomach. The stomach is also a seat of Pitta. And the stomach is a space that both Kapha and Pitta share. And in the stomach, when we look for the presence of Pitta, we can see Pitta present there as hydrochloric acid, for example, which we know is very acidic, but also pepsin and also intrinsic factor. And why is intrinsic factor also very important? So in the stomach, we also have Pachaka Pitta, as we've explained for the small intestine, but Ranjaka Pitta, another subdosha of Pitta, is also there. And Ranjaka Pitta is really present in the stomach also as that gastric intrinsic factor. And gastric intrinsic factor, in turn, is also very important for that absorption of vitamin B12. And vitamin B12 is important because it helps with the maturation of red blood cells. And as we'll see later, or as you've maybe already know, that blood is a tissue that is very strongly connected to Pitta for many reasons. So these are two organs in which we can already see Pitta in those organs.
Okay, good. So we also other organs. So if we think of, you have already mentioned the eye as an organ where Alochaka Pitta, which is responsible for vision, is there. So eye again is one of the most fiery indriyas in our body, and skin, especially the part of the pigmentation part of the skin is also.
Yeah, I can say a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
So as we see, we will see this for, if we look at most doshas, that they're really connected to two sense organs, also to motor organs. But as Dr. Vijay mentioned, really specifically being connected to the eye, where Alachaka Pitta is, but also to the skin. And the skin is called prashanam. So the skin is the location of one of the sub-doshas of Pitta. But also talk a little bit about why the skin. In this, we see that Pitta is one of the functions of Pitta is also being responsible for complexion and for color. And we also see that through the skin. But also when the ancient scriptures specifically talked about the embryological development, and they talk about the development of his skin, they talked about it as really developing from blood and from heat. And it's not only heat or only blood, but it is almost the heat of the blood. So we can almost see it as twice the amount, or twice Pitta, or Pitta on Pitta. And it is the metabolizing of blood in its second stage that forms the skin. And the ancient scriptures have a really beautiful way of talking about this, and they give a simile for us to understand it as well and to visualize it perhaps. And they talk about the formation of the skin, similar to how we would cook milk in a pot and then let it cool down. And then you see the development of a thick film, or actually literally a skin. And this is how it's been, how it was visualized or explained in some of the ancient scriptures. And then with the skin, also, as I've mentioned, another sub-dosha of Pitta being there, Brajaka Pitta specifically, it's also, then we have to also think about maybe some metabolic action there. And anything that we really apply to the skin is also metabolized. And this is also where that role of Brajaka Pitta, that sub-dosha of Pitta, also comes in.
Yeah. Good. So I will come back to you, Dennis, to dive a bit more into other tissues and other structures involved in connection with Pitta. But I would invite now in contrast to Pitta, Dr. Anju, how can we understand digestive fire, or how does Ayurveda understand the concept and the location of digestive fire? Can you just narrate on that?
Yeah. The location of Agni, the location of digestive fire is explained in the Charaka Samhita Grahani Chigilsa Adhyaya. In that, the sloka is explaining that Agni Adhishtana Manasya Grahanyad Grahani Mada. So, Grahani is the seat of Agni, and it is saying that it holds and retains the food for proper digestion and assimilation, and it holds the food just above the umbilical cord. Nabhe it's saying Nabhe just above the umbilical cord, and it is nourished and supported by Agni also. And the other thing is that Grahani, with the help of Agni, the digested food it holds and pushes the undigested food it's hold, and it pushes the digested food. And when the Agni becomes weak, this Grahani it's get vitiated, and it releases the food in the form of ama, in the form of undigested food. So it's explaining in Charaka Samhita, the main seat of Agni, the location of Agni is like Grahani itself. Grahani is the sthana of Agni.
Yeah, probably that's a very good way of looking at this word grahana, because probably this is also applicable in the case of other agnis also. So we also naturally have to ask a question: if there are 13 agnis, so there are 12 more fires that are present in our body, and where they are, right? So as Dr. Anju has explained, that the digestive fire is in the digestive tract, or in the Mahasrotas, or the channel of digestion. So what can be the situation or location of Rasa Agni? It will be in the channels of Rasa Srotas, or channels of lymph, or channels of plasma. And where is the Rakta Agni? It will be in the channels of Rakta, or blood. And where is the location of Mamsa Agni? It will be in the channels of Mamsa, or muscle tissue. So that means this positioning of digestive fire also gives us the information that each fire is located in the corresponding channels, or srotasas are explained by Charaka as the srotamsi khalu parinamam apadyamanam dhatunam abhivahini bhavanti. So channels are nothing but, or srotasas are channels which are nothing but the channels through which the tissues which are undergoing metabolic changes travels. So we classify tissues into sthai, or the tissues which contribute to the structure of the body, and asthai, which are moving and doing the nourishing function or metabolic function. So it is the channel, srotasas are the channels through which these tissues which are undergoing metabolism is moving, and who is doing this metabolism is none other than the corresponding
Agni.
And how in the digestive tract the concept of grahana, or holding the food in each compartment of the digestive tract until a digestion is finished. Yeah. So how stomach will hold the food until the proper chyme is formed. So with the acidic, almost the pH value has to raise somewhere closer to 3 or 4 in the stomach. And the whole solid food what we have eaten has to be converted into a semi-solid state by secretion of a lot of water, a lot of mucus, a lot of so many enzymes, etc. So our body has to convert the solid substances into a semi-solid substance,
Semi-solid.
and then and Anju, which is a structure which will hold the content of the stomach in the stomach until it is done.
And digestion.
Yeah, it is the pyloric sphincter. Yeah, the pylorum or the pyloric sphincter is closed until this state of digestion is completed. And only when the stomach digestion is completed and the chyme has properly formed, and then only the pyloric sphincter slowly opens and allows the food to enter into duodenum. So it's a very complex, chemical and neurological sensors there to detect this. It's a very complex thing to sense what is happening within the stomach by the stomach itself, and then to hold the food within until this phase is completed. So this also tells you why Ayurveda doesn't want you to eat after a meal. So which is called adhyasanam, which is called as overeating. If you eat soon after a meal or after 1 hour or a couple of hours of eating, then by the time the stomach was ready to release the food into the duodenum, then you add something else, then it completely changes the pH, it completely changes the texture or the composition of the things, and then body has to again overwork on it. So you can see, so this same thing is happening in all the channels. Even when the chyle, which is the end product of digestion, is absorbed into the portal circulation. And namaste. So we also have people coming in. I would also request others who are watching this live to post the questions so that we can also discuss those questions in between to make it more interactive. Rehna, who is a sister of mine, namaste. So in the same way, you can see the digested food when it is absorbed from the intestines as a chyle into the portal circulation. And there are a lot of studies happening, like what is the portal hypertension, portal vein hypertension, that what controls the velocity of absorption or circulation in the portal veins. And even this portal vein stasis, which can be compared to the concept of ama, where there's also rodha, etc. So you can see even the annarasa is being carried in these veins, and which is poured back to the inferior vena cava and then to the heart, and where it starts circulating as plasma, where the rasa is formed. And part of what we call as blood is also what we call as rasa, the liquid portion of the blood. So where heart is the root of those channels, and all blood circulations, including arteries, veins, capillaries, lymphatics, etc., also become the channels of rasa. And it is in these areas where a lot of metabolism is still happening. Many hormones come into the circulation, many exocrine. So this is how even rasa becoming a seat of pitta. So this concept of grahani, that the body has the mechanism, like in what they call as portal vein stasis, the capacity to hold the food until that part of metabolism is finished. Or we can say the rate of movement of substances in your body in various channels is directly proportionate to the metabolic rate. So if you have a fast metabolic rate, like in hyperthyroidism, etc., then you have fast digestion, you have fast absorption, all channels will be emptied and things will be circulating faster. Whereas in hypothyroidism like conditions where everything will be slower, right? So this is how the concept of grahani is also giving, and the chapter of grahani dosha is a very complex metabolic syndrome related to nutritional imbalances. Also explains how the whole body is affected when the digestion is affected. This is why Ayurveda always gives so much of importance to digestion and digestive fire. And Denise, can you also add what are the other tissues which are responsible for Pitta's functions and where you can experience Pitta?
Absolutely. So you touched on this just a moment ago, and you explained it very well. And that you explained that other tissues where we can see Pitta are both rakta, so blood, and we know that that's very strongly connected to Pitta, but also rasa. And there's also another tissue that I want to mention in which we can see Pitta or find Pitta, which is called lasika. So I'll explain a little bit about all of them to just add on to what you already said, actually, is that if we think about, first of all, if you think about blood, there is many reasons or many things we can say about how Pitta and blood are connected. But if we think about specifically why blood is a seat of Pitta, and not just why it's connected, but why it's a seat of Pitta, is that we also want to think about all the tissues or all the dhatus, as are explained in Ayurveda, have a subtissue or an upadhatu, but they also have a mala, so a waste product. And this waste product still has a function. And one of the waste products, the malas of Rakta Dhatu, is actually Pitta. So Rakta Dhatu blood synthesizes Pitta as well. And many organs that have a metabolic function, like we've seen the skin, for example, but also if we think about the liver, these in the ancient scriptures are also explained are synthesized or formed from blood. And moving from blood to what Dr. Vijay mentioned, rasa dhatu, which is the first of those 7 tissues explained, which we can maybe understand as plasma. And we have to remember that the observable blood that we see when we observe blood, this is not just red blood cells and white blood cells and platelet, but the liquid, a big part of blood as we see it, is actually plasma. And these red blood cells are also suspended in this plasma. And in plasma, there are many other things like hormones. So in that sense, Pitta is also, or rather, plasma is a seat of Pitta. And the other tissue to talk about is lasika. So instead of giving a translation of or something that it's analogous to, I will talk a little bit about a description about what lasika is or how it's been described. And lasika has been described as a fluid that is in the skin. So here again, we see that connection of the skin. But it's been described not just as any fluid, but a fluid that comes when you have an abrasion. But maybe Dr. Vijay can elaborate a little bit more about how we can think about lasika, how we can understand lasika, and why it's specifically mentioned as an important seat of Pitta.
Yeah, so that's right. So we see that the rasa, which is the liquid portion of the circulating blood, and also the fluid part of the lymph, etc., is considered as the rasa, whereas it, through the capillaries, when it reaches the tissues, it diffuses as the interstitial fluid, and it is the medium through which the nutrients or oxygen and various hormones, etc., reach to the corresponding target cells. And it is into this interstitial fluid that the cells secrete its waste product like carbon dioxide or various minerals or toxins, etc., which is again pulled by both venous system and lymphatics back to the circulation. So this interstitial fluid, especially in the skin, is what is known as lasika, which is called as dermal interstitial fluid. And there are a lot of researches happening these days about the constituents of dermal interstitial fluid, and how it can be a big tool for finding biomarkers instead of always draining blood without much invasion, etc. is recent research happening in biomedicine. And now we know that the skin and the vitamin D has a strong connection. So vitamin D, even though it is called as a vitamin, it is a hormone which is taking part in the metabolism of bone and calcium channels, etc. So the skin is responsible for producing vitamin D during exposure to the sunlight. And we know the ultraviolet radiation which penetrates into the epidermis layer of the skin fertilizes the precursors of vitamin D, like provitamin D3 to pre-vitamin D3, and then the pre-vitamin D3 get isomerized into vitamin D3, and then the isomerization process is what is finally resulting in the vitamin D production. And then it is this isomerization process interrupts the hydrophobic and hydrophilic interactions that hold this molecule within the cell membrane and expels the vitamin D3 into the interstitial fluid. So you can see how the skin and exposure of sunlight, especially the ultraviolet radiation, is triggering the production of vitamin D3 and expels it into the interstitial fluid, into the dermal interstitial fluid. And then this vitamin D3 is slowly carried by the capillaries in the dermis and maintains this concentration in the circulation and takes it to the target areas like bones, etc. So we can see that this Pitta is something which catalyzes metabolism, or is almost like a hormone. So here, probably this dermal interstitial fluid specifically, because it's interesting that the text wanted to precisely speak about lasica again after saying skin separately. So sparshanam or skin was mentioned as a specific location of Pitta, but still again they repeatedly said specifically interstitial fluid in the skin as lasica. The Toggada Kleda is also a seat of Pitta, which means that there should be. So, whenever we discuss all these biochemical parallels or so-called correlations of Ayurvedic wisdom, I would also love to tell you something. Because I think around 5 years ago, the modern biomedicine found out the biggest organ in the body. Do you know which one is that now? This is the biggest organ, or which is the biggest tissue in the human body?
Skin.
It's called interstitium. It's called interstitium. It is the interstitium. It's connected to the interstitial fluid, which is also known as the water highway in the body. So this was unknown. And in Ayurveda, we have a concept of Udaka Vahasrotas. Udaka Vahasrotas is nothing but channels of water. And when we studied, even when I used to teach, probably Anju and all might remember, we have to tell that we don't know what it is. Somehow, when the text lists 13 channels, it said there is a prana channel, which is compared to the respiratory and circulatory system, and annavahas channels, which is the digestive system, and then there is Udagavahasrotas, which is the water channel, and then it has 7 tissue channels and 3 mala channels. Yeah, this is how it is 13. And when we were students, even before 5 years, we have no parallel observation. What is the water channel in the body? Was it a mistake? And then they found out this water highways in the body, which connects the interstitial, the skin, to muscle fascias, probably in facial, like deep fascia massage, deep tissue massage. And I think there are a few techniques which specifically work with the fascia, muscle fascia, and which connects to the intestines, lungs, etc. So there's a water highway which connects the skin to the intestine and lungs. It's almost as good as saying that the Koshta Shakha Gadi and the Shakha Koshta Gadi. and there's a fast-moving fluid. This water, purely water, is moving through these channels throughout, and then they were suspicious than lymphatics, whether this can be a channel of where the metastasis or spreading of cancer from one organ to the other is happening, because the cancer cells are first expelled to the interstitial fluid, and from where the lymph channels are picking it up. So now a lot of research is going on about this water channels or interstitium. And this is how more and more discoveries about human life comes, and publications comes, and molecular biology, nanomedicine, many new branches in medicine is evolving. We see that most of these new publications in basic research, not clinical research, but in the basic research where they study about physiology or basic functioning of human body. The science is coming, the modern science is coming closer and closer to Ayurvedic principles. And so we cannot finalize, that's the position. We cannot finalize whether the Lasika they have mentioned as a state of Pitta, is it just because of vitamin D or vitamin D3? We don't know. But somehow it is just a proof, one of the proofs with which we can say that yes, there is a hormone which is produced and metabolized in the cell, in the skin, and released into the interstitial fluid, which comes to the circulation. And in this regard, I would also like to throw some light into the concept of nabhi, which is also a recent research which happened in Oxford University and published in 2018, just 4 years back, right? So when most of the Ayurvedic authors or scholars in the modern time, as Dennis has compared nabhi as these duodenum or digestive organs in that area, right? Small intestine, etc. But when we really look into Ayurveda Sharira, the section of where they explain about human body, we will find that nabhi is the name of a Sadhya Pranahara Marma, right? Marmas are vital points, and Sadhya Pranahara Marma means are only 4 in numbers, and if you puncture that, if you really break that point, the person will die momentarily, including apex of the heart. Like if you, like this is exercised too much in Kerala now, so we should be doing these sports, etc. to people, because this knowledge of marma was kept highly in secrecy because of this, because we can use this to hurt people also. So somehow, navel is considered as a Sadhya Pranahara Marma. It's a point where if you hurt, can kill the person momentarily, even there's no need of waiting for bleeding and death or etc. Momentary death. And if you further look into what is nabhi, you will also find that nabhi is a siramarma, is a vascular marma, and it's not the belly button. So most of the time we have to understand it's not a belly button, because if it is belly button, all the laparoscopic surgeries which are done in the world, I think is one puncture is on the belly button. Nobody dies. Right? The camera is usually going through the belly button, and every moment at least so many thousand people are punctured there. Nothing is happened. So definitely one thing is clear: this marma is not the navel or the belly button, and rather when we look into the measurement of the marma, it is 4 angula pramana or 4 inches, or as it is as big as this measurement. So we know our belly button is not this big somehow. Even an elephant doesn't have that big belly button. So they are not definitely speaking about the belly button or navel. Rather, they are speaking about the abdominal aorta, which is running just in front of the vertebra at that line. So around 4 inches of that part of abdominal aorta, which gives to both superior and inferior mesenteric veins, is the main seat, and the navel is the main seat of Pitta. And if you look at recent researches again, there's a publication recently about this planktonic blood flow, SBF. Splanchnic blood flow is the blood flow which comes from the celiac artery and also from the superior and inferior mesenteric artery to the whole gastrointestinal tract. And they say the function, it's almost functioning as a separate unit, and around 25 to 30% of your cardiac volume and output, and around 30% of your total blood volume is stored just in this area, right? And this splanchnic blood flow is controlled by both intrinsic factors, extrinsic factors, humoral factors. There is a complex mechanism which controls this. And there are a lot of studies happening about it. And it is the thing which brings so much of calories, of energy, ATP, etc. to the intestines, stomach, and which is responsible for digestion, absorption, and various metabolic activities are connected, thermogeneration, etc. So how in cold seasons there is a vasoconstriction happening in the periphery, and how a lot of blood pools in the center to generate body temperature, to prevent as a defense mechanism, is very interestingly explained in our classics. The Rutucharya, the season when they explain the physiology of physiological adaptation of human body to various seasons in Hemanta, in early winter, they very beautifully explains, because of this excessive cold, how there's a vasoconstriction happening peripherally, which pulls the blood into the central part of the body, which leads to Tikshna Agni, or intense Agni, strong Agni. And you have to eat a lot of food. Because if you just think generally, you will think that, okay, cold season, kapha will increase, we have to eat less. But rather, it's vice versa. It's just because of this mechanism of cold. Cooling a lot of splanchnic blood, increasing a lot of heat inside, bringing a lot of calories and ATPs there, enhancing digestion. And so this is how the concept of nabhi. And when you look at the Angavibhaga Sharira of Ashtanga Hridaya, even the word nabhi is given from the concept of chakra nabhi. Chakra nabhi means the center of a wheel. If you look at a chariot, how the axles of the wheel comes and meet in the central point. It is how so many arteries and dhamanis, 24 arteries, there are Chaturvimshati dhamanis, which comes and meet at this point. If you look at the mesenteric blood supply, how the omentum and the peritoneum, etc., has such a complex structure. So if you're a person who have done a dissection, cadaveric dissection, or if you just happen to look at Atlas or Gray's Anatomy for looking at the blood supply, it's exactly like a wheel, because these arteries go around the large intestine and small intestinal loops and make circles. And then this area, this nabhi area, is the marma bhaga, becomes the center of this whole network of blood vessels. And there should be something which is Pitta, which we don't know. And probably when we even look into this publication, which speaks about how this splanchnic blood flow can, when it is disturbed, can lead to multi-system damage and multi-organ failure. And how anesthesia can use this is the publication in the Oxford University. But this is, when I read that publication, it is as good as we saying, if Agni is disturbed, how Shante Agnair Mriyate Yukte Chiram Jivadi Anamaya Yogi Syad Vigrude. So this is where I ended the last session. How the disturbance of Agni is causing to diseases. So there should be some intrinsic factor or something which is really controlling this blood flow, which is probably a humoral factor. I also have not really looked much deeper into the humoral factors which controls this splanchnic blood flow, which is the main Pitta, which is responsible for controlling the digestion. Right. So this is just interesting to see how more and more modern research comes closer to Ayurvedic principles. Yes, so I will come back to Dr. Anju again to ask which are the imbalances of Pitta. So when Pitta is imbalanced, how can you appreciate this imbalances in your body? What are the main signs that Pitta is imbalanced?
Yeah. Pitta imbalances are mainly explained in the Dosha Adhyaya of Ashtanga Hridaya, 12th chapter. In that, it's almost similar like signs of inflammation it's explaining. So in that, the first sign is Daha. Daha is burning sensation. Burning sensation is occurring in the almost all parts of the body. And the second symptom is Raga. Raga is reddish discoloration happening in the body almost everywhere. And the next thing is Ushma Pagida. It's heat.
Ushma and Pagida. Yeah.
Ushma and Pagida. Yeah. Heat increase in the body. And Aushnyam means heat production is more in the body during this Pragoba Avastha of Pitta. And Swedana, because of this sweating is there. And Kleda, inflammation with wetness, moistening. And Sruti, here the inflammation with pus is happening. It's like secretions are happening. And Koda, decomposition. And Sadhana, debility is happening because of the Pitta Pragoba. And the next symptom is Murchana, fainting kind of symptoms are also coming. And Mada, toxicity. And the Kaduga Amlarasa, bitter and sour taste in the mouth is also present during the time of Pitta Pragoba. And appearance of the color other than yellowish white, the Pandu Aruna Varjita is also happening during the Pragoba Avastha of Pitta. So these are the main Pitta imbalances are explaining in the Dosha Adhyaya of Ashtanga Hridaya. Sir, can you elaborate? In the last class, you have explained about the diseases are happening because of the defensive mechanism in our human body. So can you explain in the context of Pitta actually?
Yeah. Good, Anju. Thank you. So if you look at those symptoms, first of all, it's very interesting that's why we have kept this name that you are inflammable. The signs of inflammation. So can you tell some of the signs of inflammation, Dr. Anju?
Redness are happening.
Yeah.
And swelling.
Yeah.
Secretion.
Yeah. Yeah. So almost it's very interesting that it's exact. The first 4-5 words used is nothing but signs of inflammation, right? So the increased sensation, the daha is the sensation. The person subjectively feel that heat is increasing in the area, right? That is daha. So it's a subjective feeling of increased temperature in the area, right? Or a burning sensation of feeling hot there. Then daha raga is redness. This is nothing but rubor explained as in inflammation, right? And daha raga ushma is calor, is increased. If you touch that area, you will feel hot, right? So the first daha is the person feels hot there, and as a doctor or somebody else goes and tests that area, there you will feel ushma.
So that is the differentiation of Ushma and Daha.
Daha.
Comes
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's the differentiation. And then Paka Paka is suppuration, pakita, right? Pus formation. So that's the advanced stage of inflammation. Inflammation, we should make sure that inflammation should not become suppuration because it's not safe if it happens somewhere internally, right? So these things can happen anywhere in the body. Daha, raga,
Yaga,
ushma, pagida, gastritis, inflammation, itis, as the word they use. It can be gastritis, hepatitis, pancreatitis. When it happens in the pitta sites, and pitta sites are unfortunately very prone for these kinds of things. We know it's how easily people can get into hepatitis, and body has some mechanism, fortunately, to prevent pancreatitis, etc. Because that can be really dangerous and very painful conditions as well, right? So this in signs of inflammation, ushma pagida, then
Ushma,
the
sweda.
sweda, then sweating and increased sweating, or that stands for the increased circulation to the area. Kleda is the swelling, right? The excessive, the dravadhadu, the edema produced there. That's another thing. So, and then sruti, that's
Shruti.
there onwards,
Secretion.
oozing happens. So
Started.
the pus comes out, or even white weeping happens from that area. No, it's kodha, etc. It's putrefaction or necrosis, etc. can happen. These are all advanced stages of inflammation. So you can see the first two lines there until a kodha is just the whole inflammatory process that they are explaining. So even if we look into the Western pathology textbooks, the first chapter of most authentic pathology textbook is called Inflammation and Healing. Being a student, I was very, very touched and happy to see that they also have this insight. Because to inflame is to heal. So, but they have a big set of anti-inflammatories. That's another thing. So they have wisdom. So if you read the Western pathology, you'll be really impressed because it has such an insight. So, and inflammation is defined as the basic response, defensive mechanism of the vertebrates towards any physical, chemical, or biological invasions or agents or disturbances. So it can be a heat like a burn or an abrasion, or it can be bacteria, fungus, or viruses invading in your body, or it can be acids or any chemical which is disturbing your body. So whenever any agent which disrupts your homeostasis enters into your system, your body primarily creates inflammation, right? So this is beautifully explained in our classics also. So Sushruta Samhita especially explains kind of silently, he doesn't say it's a classification, but in many contexts, he says Joradisaradi, diseases with like fever, diarrhea, etc., which are functional imbalances, right? In fever, diarrhea, etc., no structure is damaged or no structural deformities happen. So Joradisaradi Vyadhis are imbalances of the physiology, or which is just a functional imbalance. Whereas Shodhadi, Shobha, Grandhi, Vidrathi, Gulma, or those kinds of diseases, Arbuda, etc., are Shwayadhu Visheshas or Shobha Visheshas are just inflammations only. So we say in Ayurveda that every functional disease is fever, expressed in different ways. Fever affects the whole body, right? Sarvendriya manastavi, dehendriya. So it's deha. It affects whole body. It affects the senses. It affects mind. It affects every part of your existence, every layers of your existence. Whereas that's the same fever can happen localized in different organs, and that can be expressed as different diseases. And then inflammation is beautifully in both of these pathologies. You can see fire is the element and pitta is the thing, right? What is fever? Fever is an effort of the human body to burn something unwanted within your rasa channels, right? It pushes our doshas, pushes the digestive fire, the agni, from the amashya or from the grahani to the rasa channels, and try to burn unwanted substances. Let it be a microorganism, let it be the digestive metabolite, which is not properly formed, called ama. Let it be a toxin, let it be even emotions, including fear or shaka. It can be emotional trauma, it can be biological agents, it can be chemical agents. So, to any of these things, using the Agni of the body to increase in the rasa channel and to kind of do a incineration. A fever is a incinerative process where, yeah, body is trying to burn unwanted things, which is disturbing you and is trying to destroy you. This is fever. In the other way, inflammation is beautifully explained. The pathophysiology of inflammation and the Shobha Samprapti is very close, very similar. Ashtanga Hridaya says, Pitta Rakta Kabho, Pitta Rakta Kabhan Vayu, Dushto Dushtan Bahissiranitva. So the Vata is the first person who is sensing this challenge. Even to push Agni out of stomach, also you need Vata. To mobilize Pitta, Rakta, and Kabha to the challenging areas, it is Vata. Vata first senses a challenge and pushes the Pitta, Rakta, and Kapha in this order. So, both many enzymes, even many white blood cells, how and this fluid secretion, edema formation, etc. If you study the whole pathophysiology of inflammation, it's exactly the same. They are pushed by the Vata, Bahissira, towards the Siras which comes out to the area where there is a challenge, and then produce the obstruction there, avarodha there, and produces a utsayadam, a shobham. There's a swelling. So it's kind of isolating that area, creating a system there, and trying to attack that threat through the pitta, using pitta, rakta, and kapha. Right. So this is how, through inflammation and through fever, both functionally and structurally, Pitta is used. Fire, because fire is a big tool, right? Even for in the history of human evolution, invention of fire, how to create fire was a big revolution in the history of human evolution. Now we create it with a spark, with a bell, or this. We don't value this, right? So, but in the same way, when a human body also has fire in its hand, it's a big tool, and really Vata and the wind really uses it. And to protect your body from this fire, the Kapha, the water element, is used around it to protect. So this is how, in various diseases, Pitta is being used to produce inflammation. And some of the other symptoms, what I would, maybe you all can contribute to this discussion, where we can observe Pitta, is Dharana. Dharana is cracking. So usually cracking is found as a symptom of Vata. But if in the tongue or anywhere you find a crack, you think it's Vata, it's wind. But heat can also produce crack, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you dry something and when it shrinks and it cracks, this is how Vata produce cracks.
Compressing.
Yeah. So, wasting, for example, if the tongue is a crack, the tongue is kind of shrunken or emaciated, wasted, and there is a crack, it's definitely a Pitta crack. And most they are irregular cracks. Whereas heat swells up and inflames. Like, when you make a cake in an oven, then at a point it cracks, right? Swells and it cracks. The swelling and cracking is a Pitta cracking. So if you find the swollen tongue and a crack, it's definitely not a Vata crack. It's a fiery crack. Same in the skin also. In many areas in the skin, we will find cracks when the skin is inflamed, because it swells and with simple movement it cracks. Yeah, inflames and cracks. So a swelling, redness, and crack is a Pitta symptom, and a wasting, dryness, and crack is a Vata symptom. So this many people might clinically confuse when you treat it. And another thing is peeling. Heat also peels, like in psoriasis or in various skin conditions, peeling of skin. Even when you touch something very hot, acidic, etc. Also, you can see your hand skin might peel. So it's a kind of a pitta reaction to peel off. That's also a pitta
Pitta
thing.
symptom.
And, yeah, and another symptom or a sign, not a symptom, a sign that people usually confuse is blackish discoloration, right? So Pandura Aruna Varjita it is. So all the colors except pallor or whiteness and Aruna, dark red, all other colors are attributed to Pitta. Vata also has a Shyava, a darkening attributed, a dark circle around the eye, for example. People when they don't sleep properly, you will develop a dark circle. Darkening is different from a black pigmentation. A black pigmentation in the skin is definitely Pitta. Or a black stool, we know that it's the presence of blood
in it.
digested blood. So if there's a bleeding distally, like not from maybe in the small intestine and the large intestine, then the stool turns black. And if there's a bleeding in the rectum, then only fresh blood comes. Otherwise, the blood gets metabolized and turns black. So that's also a sign of Pitta and Rakta. Black, literally black. Whereas a dark stool is Vata, and it's get dried up. When stool stays in the colon for a long time, then it's getting dried up and it can turn dark. So this is another a symptom or sign, not symptom, a sign that people confuse between Pitta and Vata, right? So does any other and another important thing, what is alarming is that Pitta can cause this inflammation anywhere, and all those locations, right from the capillaries or arteries, digestive tract, and eyes, conjunctivitis, how easily eye can be a sign of site of inflammation, bleeding, etc. Right, retinal detachment, etc. So skin, how skin flares up, and all those organs which are explained in Sharira section, like liver, even lungs, heart, kidneys, spleen. There's so many organs. Almost all of our coelomic organs are derived from blood. And when if we find that there is a blood imbalance or Pitta imbalance in the blood, you can always expect that person is at risk of having some damage at all these organs. So it becomes very important to find what are the early signs with which we can predict that Pitta is disturbed. So I would pass this question to Dennis. Can Dennis explain what are the first alarming symptoms with which we can identify Pitta imbalance?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Ashtanga Hridayam, in actually the 11th chapter, he already speaks about the early signs of increased doshas, of which, of course, one of them is Pitta. So there's 3 early signs of which we can understand that Pitta is increased. The first one that he speaks about is yellowish discoloration of stool, urine, eyes, and skin. And if we just look at that as one symptom, the yellowish discoloration of stool, urine, eyes, and skin, this is quite literally the definition of jaundice. And what jaundice is, it's excessive bilirubin in the blood. And excessive bilirubin in the body, and bilirubin is a breakdown product of red blood cells. So here we again see that connection with Pitta and blood, and also with color, and of course the skin and the eyes and the stool. So really the many connections we can see here. And another early symptom is excessive hunger and thirst. And to understand this, if we look at what are the normal functions of Pitta, what does Pitta do when it's normal and it produces hunger and thirst? And we've seen that strong connection to digestion. So naturally, when Pitta is increased, this feeling of hunger and thirst is also increased. It's similar to how there's an increase of digestive enzymes, or very great amount of digestive enzymes. In Western medicine, they also see that, okay, a high amount of digestive enzymes creates this feeling of hunger. And lastly, an early sign of increased Pitta is also less sleep. Now, specifically, this inability to fall asleep, which is called in Sanskrit as alpanidra. So if we look at sleep, it has a very tamastic quality, so really an inert quality. And of course, when we look at Pitta, it's very much the subtle quality of tejas, and that is really rajasic or sattvic, which is anything but tamastic. So if tamas cannot come in, we cannot fall asleep. So these are really 3 early signs in which we can see that Pitta is increased.
Yeah, so that's interesting what the text says. To summarize, Dennis, so it affects your sleep. So you have to watch out your sleep. Then it affects your
Also affects your appetite. So
appetite and thirst. Yeah, and then this pigment changes. Let us generalize it as changes in skin color, right? So appearance and skin color. So yellowish discoloration is something even. So as Dr. Anju has already mentioned, every color other than Pandu and
Arunavar.
Dark red is Pitta. So various kinds of pigmentation, like too much of freckles in the body, hyperpigmentations, even skin irritations, hives and rashes, etc. So this, and excessive sweating, right? Excessive sweating, feeling of heat, etc. So can Dr. Anju also contribute to this? What in your practice? What other early signs can be used other than what is explained in Ashtanga Hridaya? What are the other possible early signs with which you can detect that a person is having a Pitta imbalance?
Sir, I used to feel like mainly burning sensation. Daha is happening in the mainly in the feet areas. People used to burning in daha usually.
Yeah.
Mainly
Yeah. So
happening.
that's So Karavadu Daha is, as we know, even in diabetes. This is one of diabetes, even though it's not a Pitta disease, but especially for people where Pitta Prameha directly starts, it might just appear as burn sensation of feet and hands, right? So it can be a very just early sign of diabetes, pre-diabetic stage of diabetes, just Karavadu Daha. Yeah. Then how does it affect mind? How can we detect that person's mind is showing some signs of Pitta?
Usually they will be like a very irritable kind of nature. Means they are getting temper really fast. It's like anger.
Yeah.
They are becoming really irritable because of stress and because of the mental heat.
Yeah, that's good. And can Dennis also relate this something with PMS?
Yeah, very much so. You can also see when there is problems during the premenstrual symptoms, that there can really be a lot of irritability and really a lot of anger and really heightened kind of like, you can say, like hot emotions essentially. Yeah, and of course also that's subjective how feeling, but really emotionally, I think this irritability and also these anger are very good indicators.
Yeah. So does it also usually reflect in sleep patterns?
Uh, yes, sir. Like irritable means they are not getting proper sleep actually.
Yeah. So people even
Irregular.
dreaming fire, right? Even dreaming fire, even people even dream. Dreams are also a strong tool in Ayurveda to predict uh, upcoming imbalances. So it is explained that even people can dream like somebody else is burned, or some even home or big areas is getting burned. Dreaming forest fire, dreaming lightning. Uh, so these kinds of fiery kinds of dreams can be a sign or a primordial sign. That means a sign that the pitta is really getting cooked up, and upcoming flaring up. This can be, and according to the intensity of the disease which is coming. Uh, it could be the intensity of the dreams can also be there. So dreams can also be a early sign of
Early
pitta
sign of.
imbalance. And in as you all said, mostly we also see in the digestive tract. We know that human body is constantly recreated from the food. So me would always look into digestion and digestive tract to see what is the dosha produced from digestion, right? So if there is symptoms like sour belching, chest burn, acid reflux, those kinds of things, that can also be a primordial symptom, because it is the chaya, right? Accumulation and kopa, uh, the dosha starting to come out of its own seat. So we know that amashaya, stomach, is one of the main seats. So it starts coming up from its seat. This can also be a easy symptom. Then redness of eye. Redness of eye. This we can use as an early sign. And eye, we know that is a seat of fire, and the white of eye. Even constitutionally, it is told that Pitta constitution people, their eye will get red even when they are angry, when they go out in the sun, even when they drink alcohol, right? So, and when they are exposed to bright light, that these things can turn Pitta constitution people's eye red. In the same way, uh, upcoming or underlying Pitta imbalance can turn always the white of the eye either red, or some vessels, blood vessels, capillaries, etc., will be visible in the thing. And another important thing is falling of hair or graying of hair, right? It's also a very strong
Wait.
pitta symptom, both falling of hair fall and graying of hair. And in the
Graying.
West, a lot of pigmentation, a lot of, if there's a lot of freckles, excessive pigmentation, that's also alarming signs. So this is how we will understand the pitta. And now, can you think about, Dennis, some causes in your culture? What can trigger pitta imbalance? Something, whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, many things actually come to mind, but one big thing that I can recognize here in the West is also generally the lifestyle factors. So, of course, we don't have as warm of a climate, but if we think about how much pressure there is also put on people in terms of lifestyle and performance and having to perform in both work and study, um, all of this intensity and intense use of mental faculties, this also aggravates Pitta very much.
Excellent. Excellent. Which pitta might be challenged by this?
I would say, of course, Pitta in general, but also very much Sadhaka Pitta.
Excellent. So the Sathaka pitta, which is responsible for accomplishing your desires, wanting to achieve, even responsible for desire, etc. Those, even the analytic function. Pitta is also attributed with high grasping power, to grasp things, to focus mind, because it's light. It's like throwing light. So if you continuously focus and if you continuously absorb information, analyze information, etc., you are really overusing your pitta. And so-called stress, even though vata is involved in stress, vata is definitely challenged by stress. The so-called pitta, because as we know, the fire is the basic thing to burn and produce so much of energy, so much of vitality. So this fire element is very much challenged when you overdo things, right? And over ambitious. That's excellent. Anju, can you also, from your practice and observations and your life experience, what are common causes that challenges pitta?
Sir, I used to think people who are more alcoholic kind of people.
Yeah, good. So what other,
They
yeah, alcohol, definitely alcohol, coffee, all these hot beverages, and
people who used to eat more spicy kind of
yes,
food
yes.
also.
So people who are kind of,
Like
and sometimes it's very interesting. It is these kinds of ambitious pitta people. Sometimes they want this. These, whatever you have told, right? They want they want stimulation, because they whenever they become low, because they always want to be high, they keep competent and they push themselves. They use this almost like a substance. Even they can use a lot of spice like a substance to stimulate them. And even the smoking, even if smoke is much related to vata, smoking, even tobacco, nicotine, etc., is also challenging pitta a lot. It produces a lot of heat in the body. So most of the substance uses, whenever you give some stimulant, it's really triggering pitta in the body. So they taste like in acids, savory things, too much salty things, too much pungent things like
pungent
spicy.
things.
Yeah. So those things will also imbalance pitta, and it's and rather Dennis, as Dennis said, the whole modern lifestyle of
Yes, sir.
over pushing yourself
Yeah.
leads to and a lot of stimulus from outside also. We are this usage of too much of screen, for example, for the alochaka pitta. This is not only for the eyes but also for the brain. It really challenges the pitta, right? So we can see how in the form of, do you want to remind me any of very important pitta challenging or fire challenging things? No. So now we will come to finally how to manage this imbalanced pitta, uh, uh, because we don't have much time now to spare on Agni. We will try to finish the pitta part. Dr. Anju, can you just elaborate precisely and concisely on what is the Ayurvedic concept of management of pitta?
Yeah. In Doshobakramaniya Adhyaya Ashtangrade, it is explaining Pittasya Sarpishapanam Swadushide Virejanam. It is explaining. So Sarpipana, drinking of grida or clarified butter. It can be a plain or medicated butter is one of the remedy. And the other thing is Swadushida Virejanam. Sweet and cold potency, cold Shida Virya medicines. Purgation, Virejanam is explaining mainly for the Pitta dosha Pragobana management. and almost all the managements, they are more connect with the cool and calm kind of thing. Means the people, they have to be they have to spend their time in the more with water, garden, fountain areas, and they have to reside on terrace lit by moonlight in the evenings, and enjoying the pleasant music and soft breeze. And almost all the management, it's explaining that it should be more it should give more cooling effect to the mind and body, and the person who should be more more contact with the people who are not restraining him, who have to speak cordially with innocence. These are the main managements are explaining in the dosha Bediya, doshobakramaniya adhyaya of Ashtangridaya. Swadhishide Virejanam is mainly explaining.
Yeah, good. So now I would like to almost coming to the conclusion of this session by summing this up, what you have explained. So if you look at the imbalance of Pitta, especially in the context of management, we have to classify the imbalance of Pitta into two. So the management of Pitta, if it is dry Pitta, that means only fire element. Only fire element increases in the body, just like hot flashes, along with less sleep, anxiety, and kind of state of encephalopathy, or kind of intoxicated state of emotion. This person presenting like this, there is no sign of wetness, like hyperacidity, reflux, or excessive sweating, or swelling, or oozing, or those kinds of wet signs. Just rukshoshna, or it's vata pitta, or it's purely fire element in the body increasing. Has to be managed totally differently from how drava pitta or liquid pitta increases. Liquid pitta means with the fire element, water element is also increasing and getting imbalanced. There, as I just mentioned, symptoms like hyperacidity, reflexes, excessive sweating, swelling, peeling, those kinds of things. The drava bhava, the liquid part, is also getting imbalanced, which has to be treated differently. Now, we have three tastes to handle pitta. We have sweet in one hand, and we have bitter and astringent on the other hand. So, sweet is the taste for dry pitta or only fire. Right? Only fire element is imbalanced. We are not supposed to use bitter and astringent, because bitter and astringent is again more drying and will add to the whole process of depletion. Whereas we will use astringent and bitter in liquid pitta. The watery and fiery element increases together, right? Then it will dry off this excessive water element and cool at the same time, right? That's where we are going to use, in wounds, ulcers, inflammations, all those oozing, pus formation. Bitter is the taste. Bitter and acid.
Nimba also.
Neem, all those things. Anything around that, right? Whereas yashti madhu, draksha, those kinds of things, grapes, licorice, those kinds of category of pitta subsiding herbs has to be used in hot pitta or dry pitta. So this is even though virechana is indicated as a treatment for pitta generally, but in the case of dry pitta, will it be helpful?
No.
No, it will not be helpful. So this differentiation is practically very important, even though it is not textually mentioned. To see if water element is, so why we want to do virechana is to drain virechana or purgation. We are using loose bowels. We are kind of emptying the bile, emptying the pancreatic juice, trying to drain. We are using the interstitium there, right? That's another thing. What is finally we are going to discuss probably after a week. Next week probably we'll discuss about kapha, and the next week onwards we are going to start with panchakarma. It is in the panchakarma we see this how we bring the dosha in the skin to the digestive tract and push it out, right? And what is the medium? Interstitium, this water highway, what I was explaining, is the medium through which these enzymes or hormones or whatever imbalancing substances was settled excessively, deposited excessively in the skin or various organs can be drained back to the digestive tract and flush. It's a flushing, right? Purgation or inducing loose bowels, we call it as virechana, is a flushing therapy which is excellent in the case of liquid pitta, which is not helpful for dry pitta or when the just fiery element is increasing, right? So this differentiation is important. And then using specific things opposite. For example, sugandhi shita hridyan, sugandha, nice fragrant smell is explained as a treatment for pitta. We know that this helps, but we also know that visragandha, foul smell, is a specific symptom or a characteristic of pitta, right? So when a person is either through sweat or through breath, through nose, through any or a wound, let it be anywhere where there is a foul smell, definitely we will find pitta is a dosha. We should bring doshas appropriately according to whether it is dry, wet, etc. But there, sugandha is important.
Sugandha.
Nice, yeah. Sugandha shita hridya, right? It should be cold, pleasant to heart, and good smelling, right? So it cannot be closed. Sometimes close can also be a nice smelling thing, but it cannot be because it's heating and tikshna. So it cannot be. It can be sandal, right? It can be rose, right? So we have to find things which are pleasant in smelling, but at the same time cooling. And pleasant to have heart. So this is how we also have to opt some of those specific lines to the context. Then using exposure to water reservoir, especially when there is dry pitta, right? Especially when there is dry pitta. When being in water, all right, being in water reservoirs full of lotus, swans, and with white sands, with wind, etc. So then how to use these various, it's very interesting how the text has used so many senses there, right? So smell is being used, touch is being used, vision, even association of beautiful women, etc., is being told. So the beauty and the aesthetic part of life, how that is also calming down your brain, and especially when people who are stressed, etc., can be used. So this is how probably according to what is, if stress is the cause, definitely we can go for relaxing techniques and relaxing treatment procedures like Shirodhara or whatever you want. But at the same time, daily distressing things like spending time in a nice park with full of flowers, yeah, with a lot of space and cooling breeze, you know, as a part of a daily regimen can be prescribed.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time in a pool, swimming pool, or in a lake can be prescribed. So this is very impressive to see how an ancient classic has really incorporated a lot of nature and spending time with nature and spending and exposing your body to moonlight, right? Is specifically told. Even water exposed to moonlight to drink, etc., is mentioned. So this is how beautifully, where I think this is to summarize, to sum up the whole session. I think both of you, Dr. Anju is practicing already in United States, and Denise is already doing massage therapy, and she's an aspiring student. And I heard you both discussing about the limitations of using the uh, herbs and medicine in the West for Ayurveda therapy. But these kinds of sutras opens a big door or a lot of doors and windows in front of you.
Yes,
This is just a
exactly
clue.
right.
This is just a clue that how we can use lifestyle, nature, seasons, etc., food, lifestyle, even certain specific practices like even Shitali pranayama, right? Just an example, Shitali pranayama in cooling down, and Chandrabhedana pranayama in the case of Pitta. So even exploring all these options. So this is just a suggestion, and so precisely understanding which elements are imbalanced, whether fire alone is imbalanced or fire and Pitta is imbalanced together, water is imbalanced together, and what is the cause of imbalance, and what gunas are imbalanced in the body, right? And appropriately, and then if skin is affected, bringing lepas, creams and lepas, etc. on the skin. So according to the site, according to the cause, according to the age, according to the type of imbalance, Ayurveda gives such a beautiful scope for a practitioner. And I think no government can put a ban on this. Nobody should sit under moon in USA. It cannot be a rule, right? And I think Anju can easily prescribe this
Yes,
to
yes.
the people freely, right? So that's the beauty of the whole thought process, and we can incorporate these kinds of approaches towards practice anywhere for any doshas, right? For any doshas. I hope this enables and inspires both of you and all the people who are watching this. So Sylviane, namaste, and Dr. Vidit, happy to enjoy your Ayurvedic science and wise knowledge from big man, south of France. Gita, thank you, Sylvia, for listening and responding to us. And I hope many people have come live watching us, and some are still watching us. And many people are going to watch us after this session. Many people, we send this link to more than 2,000 people, and many people respond afterwards. So I hope we leave these impressions even for generations to come. And yes, Pepina, thank you for re-establishing your presence. You have been watching the whole sessions with your grandson. Oh wow, Pepina, uh, uh, I'm sure she's being a wonderful grandmom, will incorporate this into the whole care of your children, and none of their doshas can be imbalanced. And hope everybody enjoyed. Yeah, and Sylvie want to say something. Ancient new beauty heals. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, beauty also can heal. So Sylvie is chewing on the information. Thank you, Sylvie. Sylvie is also a Indian soul living in France. Her name is also Geeta. She has been spending many years in India, in many parts of India. Close friend of ours. Yes, so I'm sure that many people will be helped uh, by the information that we shared, and I sincerely want to thank both of you for the effort and time that you have spent from your busy schedule to be present with us and with the whole session, and also for the preparation. Yes, Pepina want to say she's exactly doing that. She's really balancing the doshas of grandchildren. Wonderful job. I think that's people should learn Ayurveda for self care and also for care of family, and I think that's a beautiful, and friends, etc. That's a beautiful thing, and especially right from the children, if we can use that Ayurveda, they're definitely the totally different immunity, not just immunity based on vaccination, but a natural immunity. The inherent immunity can be much be benefited. Thank you, Petrina, for reminding us that, and thank you everybody who will watch this later. Namaste.
Namaste, sir. Namaste.